around the nation. TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Tuesday. Got a good show for you guys today. We've got some fun stuff to talk about, including the Nobel Prize. Not what some people in the chat were guessing. So whatever you were thinking I was going to cover as it pertains to the Nobel Prize, I might disappoint you a little bit. We'll see. Okay, so we've got that. Then we got Donald Trump's response on possible impeachment. And then, of course, we have more of an in-depth talk about impeachment, including new developments, including some centrist Democrats are now starting to support impeachment. But wait. The issue here, Nancy Pelosi. We'll talk about her as well. Then we've got policy. Bernie Sanders has a new wealth tax. I'm going to break that down. And then we have Joe Biden's, a firm link to Joe Biden talking about Medicare for all. He's poll testing Medicare for all. But wait, again, not good. So we'll break that down. So those are the things that we're going to cover today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Liking, sharing especially helps us out. Another way to help us out, patreon.com/TYTNation. In fact, I want to thank a few patrons before we get going in the show. I want to give a shout out to Jules Frazier, Justin Canton, Carl, and Kenyon Buddy. So thank you to all those people, especially Jules. Known you for a very long time. One of my first viewers, one of my oldest viewers, actually. Okay, that came out wrong. One of the viewers has been watching me for one of the longest. That's what I meant. Sorry, Jules. Didn't mean to imply that you were old. Believe me, you're not. So thank you for that. Watch. We're busted down to a $1 member. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So those are $5 patrons, level 3 members. Thank you. You guys are what make the show happen. Okay. Also, shout out to people who join using the channel members or channel membership. That is through YouTube. It's like $5 or $4.99, something like that. Why not just call it $5? Because that's just about it. Oh no, $4.99. So it sounds just like a weird psychological trick. But anyway, thank you to those people who signed up to become channel members. One of the perks you guys get is I read your comments first. And you guys have a lot of great comments, and I really enjoy doing the show with you guys. We do this thing together, right? All right. So anyway, that's okay. There's something that's bothering me, right? And it's something that I didn't really cover in a segment. But there has been, of course, nonstop attacks against Bernie Sanders by the establishment. The newest one is that since white supporters are going to, and this is the establishment framing, white supporters have gone to Elizabeth Warren. Now, he doesn't have enough people to win. Now, his base is too diverse. As recent polls have shown, that Bernie Sanders has a lot of very diverse supporters. In fact, most supporters, and this has been true all along, by the way, and this is why the establishment framing is so insidious. It's been true that younger people of color generally make up most of Bernie Sanders' base. It's not white men. It's not the Bernie bro. And that's why that's always been a myth, the Bernie bro narrative. It's always been his base made up of people of color. And now they're taking that same thing and going, well, and now that we have irrefutable proof that Bernie Sanders does appeal to people who are, again, younger people, right? And this is really what his base is made up of, is younger people of every different color, okay? He does not do well with older people, especially older African Americans. So that's why you had that Clinton firewall, South Carolina, and there were generally older voters who are African American, and Bernie Sanders could not break through back in 2016 when he's running against Hillary Clinton. And so it's still kind of true, even though that you have a lot of younger African Americans saying to their parents and grandparents, "Hey, wait a minute, no, believe me, Bernie Sanders is way better on the issues. So why not support him?" And so, we'll see if that happens to pan out. But Nate Silver took a look at this and he said, "Oh no, the people that have stayed with Sanders that are now primarily people of color, now that and this is his framing, the white people have went over to Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and hence now he can't win. Well, those people of color, they're just residue. Residue. Yeah. So, hey, Nate Silver, don't give up your day job. You're supposed to be the numbers guy, but every time he goes into political punditry, it does not end well for him because he says things like that. So, congratulations, people of color. According to Nate Silver and the establishment, you are residue. Oh, and that only applies, of course, to younger, people of color that support Bernie Sanders. You are the residue. It's gross, man. Gross, gross, gross. And they're the ones that say Bernie Sanders is the racist. So disastrous, man. The establishment is something else. All right. So before I get into the show, I do want to wish Sarge Tech a happy birthday. So happy birthday, Sarge Tech. 60 years. So hey, happy birthday, man. And thank you for supporting the show. And thank you for watching. You're one of the most dedicated people that I see in here every day. And thank you so much. I hope you have a really incredibly happy birthday. All right. So let's move on. Let's get into the show. Can you believe it, man? No, I'm gonna get angry about that and then just rage. I don't want to do that right now. All right. Now, President Trump is still a little salty that he never got a Nobel Prize. While appearing at the UN, Trump said this.
I think I'll get a Nobel Prize. How about that, Mr. President?
Mr.
I think I'm going to get a Nobel Prize for a lot of things if they gave it out fairly, which they don't.
Mr. President.
They gave one to Obama immediately upon his ascent to the presidency, and he had no idea why he got it. And you know what? That was the only thing I agreed with him on.
So, yeah, that's President Trump. Again, a little salty. He didn't get a Nobel Prize. But see, here's the thing. In order to get a Nobel Prize, which, by the way, Greta Thunberg, it has been announced that she has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Very interesting, especially considering how the UN and a lot of these climate leaders were very dismissive of her. And look, her speech yesterday, and I showed you the context. Her speech was her saying, "You guys suck. You promised all this stuff in order to fight climate change, and you've done absolutely nothing. And so we're watching you, and if you fail, I mean, we're gonna let you have it." And so their response to it is Nobel Peace Prize. Let's nominate her. Do something about the climate. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. But anyway, back to Donald Trump. You actually kind of have to do something to get nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, especially to win it. So now that something would generally be fairly positive. So now if you want to make an argument, and I've seen this, that Barack Obama no longer deserves a Peace Prize, or that it doesn't really mean a whole lot because of the wars in Yemen, Afghanistan, Libya, drone strikes, signature strikes, etc. Okay, that's a fair conversation that we can have. And I would generally agree with you. But again, the whole purpose is to honor people that have done something important, right? And generally positive for the world. So what did Donald Trump do? Well, that's an interesting question. You could make an argument that under Donald Trump, we have avoided war. Okay, like war with Iran and North Korea. And you could point to the fact that, well, look, there's an airstrike that is going to strike Iran. It's going to happen. And Donald Trump stopped it 10 minutes before it was supposed to happen. That he was previously talked into. And when you get into the details, it actually does not make a great case for President Trump being the harbinger of peace, right? He got talked into launching an airstrike, and then 10 minutes before it was supposed to happen, he's like, oh, you know what? Turns out might not be a good idea. And he was probably looking at his base, but yeah, whatever. I don't think that really deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, even though I think he should get maybe a tiny little bit of credit for not launching us into a disastrous war and actually having the correct instincts on that. But you take that credit away when you realize as well that what Donald Trump had done had actually led up to that point. And so, the reason that tensions are so high with Iran are from actions that President Trump had previously taken in the first place. And the reason I say that is because we had a deal with Iran. It was a fairly good deal. It was actually a great deal. The whole world had signed on to that. And then what happened? Donald Trump gets elected and he rips it up. He violates the deal. So, no, I guess he doesn't get any credit because it's his fault. We're in this mess in the first place, and there's so much tension. And then, of course, there's backing Saudi Arabia and their attacks on Yemen, their genocide in Yemen. It's killed thousands of people. You have people that are starving. You've got cholera that's rampant. And yet Donald Trump has vetoed congressional attempts to stop selling Saudi Arabia American weapons. So who deserves a Nobel Peace Prize? Not Donald Trump. If you believe he does, you are delusional. And besides, the only reason that he actually wants it and that he's mad about not having it is because, well, look, he's already mentioned the reason. That they gave one to Obama. I want one too. Well, again, you actually have to do something. But no, he says, how unfair that the black guy gets one and I don't get one. And so it's rigged. Rigged. We know black people are violent. They don't deserve peace prizes. Why is he getting a peace prize? Why did he get one and I didn't? Everything comes back to Donald Trump being a victim. And Obama, of course, not being deserving / white enough. Okay. There we go. All right. We have more Trump shenanigans in the UN. Let's change that video here. Now, President Donald Trump was recently asked how he felt about calls for impeachment. Now, nearly 150 House Democrats say they are backing articles of impeachment against Donald Trump for his inappropriate call with the president of Ukraine. Now, the call itself wasn't inappropriate by itself, but it was the content of the call, which prompted a whistleblower complaint. So now, according to news reports that have come out, Trump had pressured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at least 8 times to investigate his political opponent's family. That would be Hunter Biden. That's the son of Joe Biden. Hunter Biden, by the way, is, I believe, on the board of a Ukrainian gas company. So now that's incredibly problematic, going after Biden's family, at least when it comes to that, because, look, if you're going to pressure another country into an investigation while withholding U.S. aid, that's hugely illegal, right? Not only that, but getting that information would be also considered a campaign finance violation. So sort of the same thing that the Mueller report was kind of about, right? So now, Trump's response to this question, it's going to sound vaguely familiar. Take a look.
Mr. President, Congress is moving towards impeachment, including Nancy Pelosi, could be as a result of the Ukraine call. How do you feel about that?
I think it's ridiculous. It's a witch hunt. I'm leading in the polls. They have no idea how they stop me. The only way they can try is through impeachment. This has never happened to a president before. There's never been a thing like this before. It's nonsense. And when you see the call, when you see the readout of the call, which I assume you'll see at some point, you'll understand. That call was perfect. It couldn't have been nicer. And even the Ukrainian government put out a statement that that was a perfect call. There was no pressure put on them whatsoever. But there was pressure put on with respect to Joe Biden. What Joe Biden did for his son, that's something they should be looking at.
This has never happened to a president before. But impeachment? Bill Clinton? Over... And of course, the thing about that is that was over an inappropriate relationship, not extortion, which is essentially what this is. Leveraging U.S. military aid to a country in order to get possible dirt. And it's not even that dirty, right? On a possible political opponent. What else do you call that? Hugely problematic, right? So no, for one, you heard it. Witch hunt. No, you literally admitted on camera to making that call to Zelensky. And yes, you admitted that you talked about Joe Biden. Not only that, but your lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, has been on TV multiple times saying, well, we were looking into Hunter Biden, who, by the way, he's got drug problems. Oh, they go dirty, real dirty. So now the conversation, and by the way, this is what Trump had said. The conversation I had was largely congratulatory. It was largely corruption, all the corruption taking place. We don't talk about corruption today. It was largely the fact that we don't want our people like Vice President Biden and his son creating to the corruption already in the Ukraine. I just read it verbatim. Now, here's the thing. Talking about Hunter Biden. Now, was what Biden's son did illegal? Did he do anything illegal? No, of course not. Now, was Joe Biden in a position to have a conflict of interest? Especially considering that there's an investigation, or there was going to be an investigation into that gas company that I'm not sure even happened, and that Joe Biden had called for the removal of an investigator, right? Is that a conflict of interest? Absolutely. Now, Joe Biden says, well, I never talked to my son about this. Does anybody believe that? I mean, where have we heard that one before? Oh, right. Donald Trump, who instead of divesting from his businesses once he became president to avoid a conflict of interest, that's why I bring this up, he claims he put his money in a blind trust headed by his sons. Really? Now he swears, oh, no, I don't talk to my sons about this blind trust because it's a blind trust. I don't talk to them. Now, does anybody believe that? I don't believe that. You don't believe that. We know he talks to him about his money. You know he's the one managing that blind trust. So-called blind trust. Now, you want to talk about corruption. Donald Trump does corruption better than anyone else on the planet. It's just that nobody wants to hold him accountable. But yeah, that's kind of a different rant. So now, there's one more thing. Let's go to the obvious lie, that's the polling, right? Just for shiggles. Real Clear Politics average of current polls has Trump losing to Joe Biden by about 12 points, losing to Senator Bernie Sanders by about 6.5, and losing to Senator Elizabeth Warren by 5 points. Okay, early polls, I get that. But again, that's an average of all the polls taken so far. And it has Trump losing bigly. I'm ahead in all the polls. Now, unless he has some sort of internal polling that is way different than what we see anywhere else, he's not leading anyone. So, of course, look, either he's got that internal polling, which has to be massively wrong, uh, or more likely, he's lying. He's lied like 12,000 times. It's been documented. But again, that's he's probably lying. You know why? Because that's kind of what he does, and he has a track record of doing so, and lying, and gaslighting, and obfuscating. We all know it by now, and that's just another attempt to try to protect himself from what could be disastrous investigation slash possible impeachment. We'll have to see on that, because there's some barriers in front of impeachment, and I don't know if we're going to be able to break them down. But again, that is a different conversation for a different time. Okay. So now let's get to the impeachment. We're having that conversation now. Okay. Oops. All right. The support among Democrats for the impeachment of Donald Trump has been rising. It's being reported now that more than a dozen House Democrats, including conservative Democrats in conservative districts that are vulnerable, have announced their support for impeaching President Trump over the last few weeks. Support is actually reaching a really high level, so much so that it's causing Nancy Pelosi to possibly rethink her position. Now, this comes as reports come out that Trump had pushed Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden's family, specifically Hunter Biden, because Hunter Biden had a position at the head of a Ukrainian gas company. So now, okay, so now the new members announced their support for impeachment, have brought the total to over about 150, or nearly 2/3 of the caucus. Again, that's important because there's a lot of numbers. But look, the real people that you have to convince is the Speaker of the House. That would be Nancy Pelosi. And Speaker of the House doesn't do anything unless there's a massive, massive majority, including corporate Democrats. And that's actually what's happening. So now, in a Washington Post op-ed published Monday night, 7 moderate first-term Democrats, all of whom who are frontliners, I'm sorry, all but one are frontliners, the group of the party's most electorally vulnerable members have pushed for impeachment. Now, this group included Representative Gil Cisneros of California, Jason Crow of Colorado, Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania, Elaine Luria of Virginia, Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey, Elisa Slotkin of Michigan, and Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. Not Spamberger, Spanberger. Got to get that right. Okay. So now, what makes this interesting is all of these are establishment centrist Democrats. These are your milquetoast, let's not rock the boat Democrats. And there are also military, defense, and intelligence veterans. That's very interesting. They all called recent reports about Trump and Ukraine, quote, stunning. Okay, well, now that's interesting. So, now what did they write in this op-ed? They said, if these allegations are true, we believe these actions represent an impeachable offense. Whoa, strong words. We do not arrive at this conclusion lightly, and we call on our colleagues in Congress to consider the use of all congressional authorities available to us, including the power of inherent contempt, I'll explain that, and impeachment hearings to address these new allegations, find the truth, and protect our national security. So now, impeachment, you know what that is. It's an impeachment inquiry, which would prompt an investigation, and would go around the House and the Senate. And so, okay, that would be the option that would remove Donald Trump from office. The other one, inherent contempt, would do none of those things. It would just basically find Donald Trump in contempt uh, and issue a condemnation to him, which has no legal teeth on it. Okay. So anyway, maybe okay. Now Jason Crow said this: when it comes to the defense of our nation, upholding the Constitution, you know what we have to do. We do what we have to do. We are facing an unprecedented scenario where the sitting president of the United States is alleged to have withheld foreign military aid to force a foreign government to open up an investigation against a political rival to gain an advantage in the election. That is shocking, and politics should not have a play in it. So now, here you have establishment Democrats, 150 total, establishment, progressives, everyone in between, saying, let's impeach him already. He has done criminal activity. Let's go, let's go. Now, Nancy Pelosi, however, Speaker of the House, says, I don't know if I'm there yet. Still, again, she's getting a lot of pressure now from conservative Democrats. Now, she says that she will call a meeting of the entire Democratic caucus later today in order to discuss impeachment. Well, here, do we have some progress? Now, do I think will she impeach? I don't know. Here's the thing. Democratic leadership is so weak that even when they talk about impeachment, you still don't know if they're going to do it. And that's the problem here, right? Again, when this Ukraine story broke, Nancy Pelosi did nothing but write a strongly worded letter. What's the point of a letter? I mean, especially if it's not backed by action. I know a lot of the discussion says, well, yeah, but you don't understand. Impeachment will embolden Donald Trump. That's why we must stick to our strongly worded letters that he will promptly crumple up and throw in the trash while cackling to himself. We all have that image now. You're welcome. But again, here's the thing. He's already been emboldened by the lack of action. Mueller refused to indict Donald Trump based on his interpretation of Department of Justice guidelines, even though there were 10 clear counts of obstruction of justice. Now, that lack of indictment, that lack of accountability has led Trump to probably think, hey, just like everything else I've ever done in my entire life, there are zero consequences. So I can do whatever the hell I want. If I can get away with this, then why can't I get away with that? Why can't I just go and call Ukraine and leverage military aid in order to get dirt on my opponent? I mean, nobody's going to come after me. Nobody's going to punish me. Why wouldn't you do it? There are no consequences. Again, Trump is not a normal politician. He's also not a normal human being. So, I mean, look, he doesn't care about the consequences because it's already been shown that there are no consequences ever for anything that he does. Oh, you're going to get a strongly worded letter. He doesn't care about your letter, Nancy, or your stupid document requests, which, by the way, they're not stupid, but according to him, they are. And according to people that Congress has taken out to do hearings and to request documents from, like Michael Flynn, for example, or Corey Lewandowski, they don't care. They won't appear before Congress. They won't. And because it's not an impeachment inquiry, they don't actually, and because it has no teeth, they can't actually do anything. No, what they need to do is actually declare it an impeachment inquiry to make sure that you actually have teeth. And then if they fail to show up, if they fail to supply the documents, you can throw them in prison. Throw their asses in jail. Lock them up. Lock them up. Lock them up. Come on. Come on. That's what needs to be done. I mean, again, because right now, Donald Trump's laughing at you. Michael Flynn, laughing at you. Corey Lewandowski, laughing at you. He went in front of Congress and spat in their face. He's like, I'm not telling you anything. And then he goes on Fox News and brags about it. Yeah, I told Congress absolutely nothing. Because there are no consequences. No consequences for breaking the law. And I'm sorry, you have to have consequences Because if you don't, uh, let me borrow a phrase from Donald Trump. If you don't have consequences for law breaking, well, then you don't have a country. Well, do we have a country? Do we have a constitution? Do we have laws? If so, Nancy Pelosi, you need to get your butt up and impeach. So now, what's interesting about this, progressives have of course, led the way. I mean, Rashida Tlaib, I believe she was said either that or it's Ilhan Omar, although all of them are, all the members of the squad are in favor of impeachment. But I believe it was Omar that said, impeach the MFer. Yes. And here you have a quote here from Jamie Raskin. Now, he talked to BuzzFeed News, and he said, quote, the fate of the republic is coming down to a few days here. People believe that this is just not a sustainable course of action for us to follow. The president to get away with this continuing betrayal of his oath of office. And that's the key point. I mean, he has betrayed his office, he has betrayed the Constitution, and he has betrayed national security. You know, you look impeachment up in the dictionary and you find a picture of what the president just did. Jamie Raskin, actual progressive, actually strong on this. Now, when you get to the Democratic response, not strong. As far as the, and again, before this, I guess before that op-ed came out, there's very little, very muted response to Donald Trump, other than, you know, some words. Bill Weld, though, you go over to the Republicans, Bill Weld says, execute him. Literally treason. You need to get him out of here. That's strong. But hey, when it comes to Democrats, what Raskin said was actually very strong. He's like, impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. Let's go already. And he's been in favor of it since the beginning. So now, here you have the situation where you have moderate Democrats now, as well as progressives, getting together and saying, okay, now it's time. Now, the question is, will anything happen? Because it really is up to Nancy Pelosi. Now, according to a Politico report, House Democrats have considered a select committee on impeachment and considering a resolution condemning Trump, a formal condemnation that would not have the force of law. I bet dollars to donuts, Nancy Pelosi is going to override the majority of her caucus and do a condemnation. That's my personal guess. Why? Why would I make that guess? Because Nancy Pelosi is weak, not because she's a woman, but because she's bought. Because she is the assistance. Because she has done nothing but protect Donald Trump from actually being held accountable for his crimes. Maybe it's because, I don't know, she's got something that she wants to hide. Or maybe she's protecting other establishment Democrats. I mean, Richard Neal is a very powerful corporate establishment Democrat in New York. He had the power to request Donald Trump's taxes. You remember the thing that all the establishment Democrats are always talking about. David Corn tweets it once a day. I think it's time to see Donald Trump's tax returns. Richard Neal was in the position to get those tax returns. You know what he said? Not going to do it. I'm not going to follow that up. Now, why would you think that is? Oh, it's because Richard Neal never released his tax returns. The irony, too, here is again, you have all these establishment Democrats that slammed Bernie Sanders for a while not releasing his tax returns. And he released them, and it was fairly boring. Oh, but you understand, he's a millionaire now. That's because he wrote a very successful series of books and had been taking a congressional salary for decades. Of course, he is now a millionaire. These same people, again, support people like Richard Neal, who protect Donald Trump and his tax returns. Come on. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's her donors. I don't know if the fact that she's part of the club and that the club protects itself. I don't know. But I would be very, very surprised if even now, with all this establishment support behind impeachment, all these Democrats lining up and saying, just impeach the MFR already, that she will still go, no, strongly worded letter, condemnation, and we're going to let it go. We'll see. We'll see. All right. I'm going to take a break. We come back. We have, we're going to switch gears. We are going to do the wealth tax, talk about that, which is awesome. And then Biden's trying to undercut Medicare for all. And, well, I will break down how. So, all right. Stay right here. Comments, super chats, questions, whatever. I'll read some when I get back from the break around the nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TBT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so breaking news. Pelosi is expected to announce an impeachment inquiry. I'll believe it when I see it. And so maybe we'll see it. Look, again, I'm super skeptical. Is it an official, formal impeachment inquiry? Will it have enforcement? Will it have teeth? Will it be able to get those subpoenas related to this? I don't know. But yeah, there it is. So we'll report on that probably tomorrow. Okay, so let's go to some comments here. Star Trek says Fox even slammed Bernie Sanders for his clothes because they were from Kohl's. Wow. That was an awesome interaction, by the way. Somebody asked Bernie Sanders, Armani suits go for about what, $2,000, $2,500, and Bernie was like, yeah, but I bought my clothes at Kohl's. So he buys stuff on the cheap, and I totally do as well. So this jacket was like $60. So I know wearing no expensive crap. What are you talking about? Okay, can't afford that. Moreland Gall Hamathar says, but his kids bought the old man an expensive warm coat. An expensive warm coat. Fake progressive. Yes. You ask a right winger, Bernie Sanders should be wearing like a barrel or a potato sack. It makes no sense to me. It's one of those things where it's like, you're not allowed to live in society because you criticize aspects of society. Doesn't make sense to me. But James Watson says the Ukraine story is nothing next to the fact that Democrats won't do anything about the Trump administration defying their subpoenas. And those are related problems, though. They won't. I don't think they'll do anything about the Ukraine story. Maybe. But again, I don't trust Pelosi, and we have to see what she actually says. And I'd be very surprised if it actually is a strong hearing, and they can request those documents and actually do something about the subpoenas. And if they won't do something about, Ukraine, then they won't do anything about the subpoenas either. And so again, I'm very critical of the Democratic Party because they are so embarrassingly, devastatingly weak, and depressingly weak. So again, we'll have to see. Okay. Moving on. A new poll is out, and it's been testing messages designed to undercut public support for Medicare for All in order to find specific talking points that will work to try to undermine that support. So now the survey was commissioned by none other than the centrist Democratic think tank Third Way. And let me read you the results of the survey, and we'll get into the details of how the numbers turned out the way that they did. So now, it started off by finding that support for Medicare for all was really, really high. The government-run healthcare system, and by the way, that's what they framed it at. It's not government-run healthcare; it's government-run insurance. But nonetheless, they frame it that way, and still, Democratic voters, by a margin of 70 to 21%, said, "Yeah, I'm in favor. Your government-run healthcare, government-run insurance, whatever. It's fine. It's better than what we have now. We are in favor of it." So now, the survey goes into saying, "But here's how we can oppose it, and we're going to use these specific talking points in order to oppose it." So now the study showed that Democrats are most swayed by these arguments, that the program would impose a heavy cost on taxpayers, which we'll get into the details about, and threaten Medicare for senior citizens. Well, now, wait a minute here. Already incredibly untrue. So they argue that without evidence, that it would A, cost more, which, again, every study that's out showed it actually costing less, and B, somehow threatening the existing Medicare system for seniors, which makes no sense because it's an expansion of Medicare. In fact, it would help seniors because it would actually cover more. It would be an expansion of benefits, vision, dental, etc. Right? And so it would also close those gaps in coverage, which have led a lot of seniors to take out expensive Medicare supplement insurance plans from private insurers. So, full of lies. So, you're not going to be surprised about who ran the poll. Now, the poll was conducted not just by Third Way, of course, but by specifically Lisa Grove of Anzalone List Grove Research. Now, her partner, John Anzalone, is the chief pollster and an advisor to Vice President Joe Biden. Oops. Shocker. So here's what they do. They run a survey filled with lies in order to figure out what lies work best to support Medicare, to destroy support for Medicare for all. So that's super gross, right? So let's break down what was the most effective so that we can, of course, counter it with actual facts. Now, the survey found the Democrats are most swayed to oppose Medicare for all when told it would cost American taxpayers $3.2 trillion per year. Notice in that question, no context. So there's no context. It'll cost $3.2 trillion a year. Now, again, that's a Republican strategy of basically saying this will cost on top. Now, they don't say specifically on top, but they don't say that it will cost only 3.2. It'll cost $3.2 trillion, and most people would assume that it's on top of what it already costs right now. And that's a gigantic number. When in reality, our current system costs about $3.4 trillion. So it's pretty expensive. What we already have, and it doesn't cover everyone. In fact, there are millions of Americans that are covered that are not covered with insurance, or they are underinsured. People are still dying because of lack of health care, not being able to afford high deductibles or their medicine. So huge problems. So now, again, our system is incredibly expensive as it is. And they're saying, well, it costs $3.2 trillion. That's terrible. Within 10 years, it's going to cost a lot more, $5 trillion. So, I'm sorry. This is 3.4 a year, right? So $34 trillion over the next 10 years. Our system is going to cost $50 trillion in 10 years if we go business as usual. And of course, look, Joe Biden says, well, I don't want to go quite business as usual. I want to make a few tweaks to Obamacare and maybe do a public option. But that will not keep costs down. And so you will still end up having a system that, has a private insurance and maybe a public option that is, very, very weak, I can expect, because our country is corrupt, our government is corrupt. And so I don't know what the costs are going to end up looking like. But Medicare for All has the cheapest cost out of all these different plans because it tamps down on the profit motive endemic in our healthcare system. That profit motive is the problem. That profit motive creates bureaucracy, inefficiency, because some of that money is siphoned away in order to go into the pockets of executives as well as into advertising, etc. All that and stuff is part of that for-profit healthcare system. You get rid of that, you get rid of all that overhead. There's a reason that Medicare actually is so much cheaper than traditional private insurance. So, okay, now 51% of that, despite all that, 51% of Democratic primary voters said that they found that argument convincing. 43% said they did not. Absolutely disastrous. The poll also found that 51% of Democratic voters polled said the argument that it would end Medicare as we know it was convincing. Again, not true. Takes the existing Medicare program, expands it, again, covers more. It's more comprehensive, and actually outlaws private insurance that would cover those things. Okay, so it bans duplicative coverage, meaning you can't have a private insurer also cover vision and dental if Medicare for All covers that. And it does. It also covers reproductive health care. So, again, expansion of what's already there, complete and flat out lie. You could read his proposal. It's right here on Bernie Sanders' campaign website. Still, 53% found the claim that it would lower quality care for seniors convincing. Disaster. Again, Republican talking points. Okay. Not surprising considering that Joe Biden is basically a Republican. And let's be honest about that. Now, one more finding. Democratic voters in the ALG research survey were less swayed, and this is interesting, by the fear of losing private employer-based coverage. 45% said that argument was convincing, while a majority, 49%, said it was not convincing. So they're, according to the results of this poll, I think they're going to start moving away from, but it'll take your private insurance away. Most of the voters, even in this biased poll, were like, yeah, and so? Again, still a bit of a disaster because it's such a high number. But again, private insurance would be replaced with better coverage. Employer-sponsored insurance wouldn't be a thing. That would not only help you be able to switch jobs whenever you need to without fear of losing your health insurance, but it would also save companies money because now they would not have to provide insurance to their employees, meaning that they could take some of that and actually put it back into the workers. Now, that's not going to happen unless there's a union. And so the other conversation here is, well, what's going to happen to the union benefits, right? Because they negotiated for that. Well, instead of negotiating for better health care, they can say, well, look, you saved so much money now that you don't have to provide health care for us or health insurance. So we want that money to go into wages, into higher wages. So it's also a win for unions. This survey is what they call a push poll. Again, putting out these false narratives, right? They slant the questions, they get desired results. And all in order to find what works best for trying to dismantle the idea of Medicare for all. It really is gross. So now Bernie Sanders took aim at this, and he said this, quote, "It is unfortunate but not surprising that Vice President Biden's polling firm is helping to distort what Medicare for all is all about. Any tax increases would be used to eliminate costs for people seeking health care." And of course, that means he does that by eliminating premiums, copays, and deductibles. Now, Jim Kessler, who is the executive vice president for policy at Third Way, said the poll shows that President Donald Trump is deeply underwater on health care, and the only lifeline that could pull him to shore is Medicare for all. Saying that this policy, if Democrats back this policy, well, they're going to let Donald Trump win. No, the only way that's going to happen is if you lie about Medicare for all. Now, the survey also tested positive messages for the policy, and when they did, it showed that 78% of Democrats were swayed by the argument that the U.S. should join the rest of the world in making healthcare a human right. And so, look, that's why you see everyone using that line. Oh, I believe healthcare is a human right. That's why I have a public option. Okay. Now, in addition, 70% of primary voters were swayed by the argument that Medicare for all would get rid of out-of-pocket costs for everyone seeking care, and that, of course, is 100% true. So they know the arguments that work in favor, and they know the arguments that work against. So now, I wouldn't be surprised to see them develop a strategy to, of course, hype up the negatives on that, and that, of course, is what we already went through. That it would end Medicare as we know it. Complete and utter horse crap. It's unreal, right? This entire thing it shows that the Biden camp is nowhere near progressive. I know it's crazy, right? You guys are like, well, of course we know Joe Biden's not a progressive. That's a ridiculous idea. But most people don't know because here you have media that are calling people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi progressive. They're not at all progressive. Not at all. Only in the Democratic Party do they take, and this is the other takeaway here, money and resources to defeat their own ideas. You don't see that in the Republican Party. You don't see a massive amount of money and resources going to defeat the idea of giving tax cuts to the rich. Because essentially that's what they're doing, right? That's all they really do. But in the Democratic Party, you take an idea, they take ideas that are very popular, and they say, how can we make sure to destroy this idea that is really popular and we could use it to win elections? Only in the Democratic Party, because unfortunately the Democratic Party loves to lose and at the same time loves to please corporate donors. Okay. Oh, the wealth tax. I'm gonna have to do that tomorrow. I ran too long. All right. Hey, that's all I got. That's all I got time for, guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Greatly helps us out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. I'm not sure if any of you have not subscribed, but please do if you haven't. Or check to see if you're still subscribed and you still get messages. You have to click the bell twice in order to be able to receive notifications of the show. So that's how you do that. Okay. We're going to have to see what happens with the Nancy Pelosi impeachment stuff. Should be interesting. We'll find out very, very soon. That will be starting. So I guess, keep your fingers crossed. All right. Thanks, guys. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys later.